everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly, your tech startup podcast for May the 27th, 2016. My name is Stephen Campbell, a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. With me is my host, podcaster, Amaris Gerson.
Good morning, Stephen.
Hey, Amaris, how are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah, good. I like the Blue Jays shirt today.
Yeah, I'm going to Jays game later.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
They're going to lose.
Who are they playing?
No.
Boston?
Boston.
They might
I don't
lose.
know. Red Sox? I believe those are the Red Sox.
Not the White Sox.
It's the Red Sox.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Matt is obviously a Toronto Blue Jays fan, so let's
am.
introduce. Joining us today is Amandah Wood and Matt Quinn from Ways We Work. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
how's it
Welcome,
going?
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much
Thanks for
for
joining
having
us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Blue Jays fans, or
I am.
yeah?
Because that's all we're going to talk about. It's just sports.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Psych!
I only know about one team. Apparently, there's another team that's in the playoffs that
Really?
Right?
may or may not be doing good.
There's playoffs?
Yeah, the Toronto
Although
Raptors are have their last game tonight.
That's why
possibly.
everyone's so
No,
upset.
yeah, I don't know. Hopefully not.
Yeah, Game 6, and if they win, they go back to Cleveland for Game 7. So it's a
Okay,
must-win tonight.
enough
I guess.
sports.
Yeah.
Is that enough
So-
sports for you?
Yeah. Tell us about Ways We Work.
Yeah. So let's give
What
us
is
your
it?
pitch.
Yeah, so Ways We Work is an online publication that's been running for about 2 years now. And basically, we interview all different creative professionals about how they do the work that's meaningful to them. And we try to focus a lot on the how specifically, and like the challenges, the different challenges that come up when you're trying to do the work that you love, and what it actually looks like and what it actually what it means.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you're browsing social media or whatever, you come across posts and you hear a lot about the successes people have. You hear about the wins, the victories. I got this much funding. I got this much things. But you don't often hear about the everyday challenges that people go through, the trenches, as we refer to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of like shed some light on that and open up kind of like the conversation around, what it's like to go through and have a startup or have a creative pursuit that you want to do, but and talk about just the nitty gritty, like the daily ins and outs, like, am I going to survive today, or like, and the mental challenges that go along with that. So
You will, Matt. You'll be fine.
yeah, totally. I hope so. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing pretty good today.
Yeah, we got some easy questions for you.
Yeah, good. So yeah, that's kind of like where we really wanted to take it. We really wanted to start this conversation around the realities of like doing the work you love, not just the wins and the successes you see on Facebook.
And you're not
stuff.
just talking to people who work at startups. Like, it's not you're just talking to founders, which is often the stories that we
Yeah.
hear about. It's just the founders or just that, but you're talking to
Yeah.
people that work in the
Yeah.
company and different areas of the company.
Yeah, so I mean, I say creative professionals because I think we've sort of just naturally focused on that niche. We're both kind of creative ourselves. Matt's done design and development for years. Like I have a fine arts degree, so but we are both really immersed in the tech industry as well. So we kind of are getting a little bit of both. Like we'll talk to people in startups and tech companies, but we talk to freelancers. We talk to people who are self-employed, who are entrepreneurial, photographers, like all different types of people. Yeah.
Well, but you have had some people that work at very large companies.
Yeah, definitto. Yeah, it's a good mix.
Yeah, we wanted to cover a large cross section of people because there is different people have different they want to pursue different things. So some people want to be self-employed. Some people want to maybe toy with freelance. Like they might be in a big job and they want to maybe look at becoming a freelancer or doing something different, or like even just changing careers. I'm like, maybe I'm going to be a photographer tomorrow, or maybe I'm going to be an artist or something.
You already are a photographer.
That's personal reference. But, so sometimes you're working in these fields and you're just like, you're just not feeling it. You're not
It's
loving
the
your
side
job.
projects and the passion projects.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
just kind of dig into one of these side projects or a hobby or whatever it is, and you're like, well, how can I turn this into my actual work? 'Cause I love it so much. And so that's where really, hopefully, we can be a resource for those people. And then there's the other side, the people who've been kind of like maybe in the startup scene for a while, and they're just like, what is it like to work at Facebook? Like
like
maybe
never
I
a real
should
job.
maybe I should just try that for once. So
Yeah.
that's why we like to cover that really large cross section of people.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you have any tips for getting the bad stories out of people, or getting the struggles or the challenges? Because we'll often get people on sort of auto where their success stories just roll off. They have their marketing spiel,
Yeah.
but that's hard. Like people will shut
Totally.
down. Like how do you get that good stuff out of them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the things we've learned is asking the question a second time, or if they didn't really there's so much that can get lost in communication. Like, so asking it a different way, or like if they didn't understand it, trying to understand why they didn't, and then the biggest thing is making someone comfortable. And I think that just comes with practice,
We're
like
not good at that.
we're like I get super nervous and sweaty every time, like before we do an interview. So, but for me, it's learning like, okay, I need to like get rid of that. I need to like lose that nervousness so that I don't so that I don't project that onto them. So that's a really big thing. And then like just kind of starting it off by, I think with ways we work too, I think people are getting to know it a little bit now, that they come prepared that that's the kind of conversation we're going to have. Yeah. So I think that lends itself well to that.
Well, and when you were talking to creative people, there tends to be a bit more openness with.
Yeah, totally.
Typically with those types of people, as opposed to strictly tech people. Yeah. Which, have a reputation of not really being in touch with.
Totally.
Communication skills.
Yeah. I would just echo too that like asking the question more than once is a really really, or just like navigating around it. Like, okay, at the beginning of the conversation, they might not be ready to answer those types of questions. So you might throw out a soft question just to see if they're open to that kind of route. You just kind of like feel the conversation out. And then you might come back to it later and squeeze in a question about, after they've kind of answered some softballs, but then just like Amanda said, it's just really about getting people comfortable and, just having it be really honest and open and having it more conversational rather than it being just like
next question.
Question number one. What do you do for a living? And just having a dialogue too. So like you sharing some of your own experiences with their experiences and make it more relatable.
So that was my next question: is have you guys eaten your own dog food, or have you done the process on yourself? Right, that's a tech term.
Yeah, we tried.
Yeah. Okay. So like, have you guys, or do you guys dying to tell your own story about your own?
Well, we don't want to be too narcissistic, but at the same time too, like we're going through all the things I think the people that we interview are going through.
It's become very meta.
It really is, because sometimes we're just like, we should really take that advice. But at the same time too, like we kind of have to stay a little bit away from it, but at the same, we always want to share kind of what we're going through.
Yeah, I think. When the project first started 2 years ago, that was always my goal. I was like, I want to share what it's like to actually do a project like this too, alongside sharing all these other people's stories. And like that was my goal and my ambition. But I think once you really get into it, it's a lot of things. Like you get scared of being too vulnerable is one thing, and sharing too much. And then you also just don't have the time because you're busy writing other people's. Right? Totally. Yeah, that's a great point. Like transparency takes a lot of work. It's not something that just comes naturally. Right. So we're getting a little bit better at that now. Like we've been publishing a couple of things on Medium about like how we do our interviews and how that whole process works. Right. And we've been doing more of these and like trying to see if we could do some talks and like share our experiences of actually doing the project. So we're getting there.
And one of the things too is that like you kind of have to give to get. So if we have to kind of set the bar from a vulnerability standpoint, if we want vulnerability from people, so we kind of have to just kind of put ourselves out there and hope it's in that right sweet spot of not oversharing but not undersharing, and just this nice little kind of. Right.
It's terrifying, but I get it.
Yeah, because you're just like, here we're making mistakes left and right, or we're doing this right, we're doing that wrong. It's judgment can be a challenge for sure.
So you've been doing this for 2 years. How many people are reading? Why 2 years? Is it working?
Oh man, that's a hard-hitting question.
That's what I'm here for.
So it's been really interesting. Like in the past 2 years, where are we at, I guess, in terms of readership? I would say on average right now we have about 30,000 uniques a month, just as like a pretty average number that we're getting. And I don't know, why do we keep doing it? That's a really good question.
Why do you keep doing it? You've got readers. Like if you were just writing and it was your mom reading it, you might not be doing that. But you have 30,000 readers, that's pretty good. And that's on average. I'm sure that is much higher for certain people that you're talking to.
There's peaks and valleys, for sure.
Exactly.
And I think, for us, we at the beginning it was very like, well, at least when I jumped on board, there was, for me, it was a big focus on the numbers and like, are we growing and all this other stuff. So But I've kind of started to detach myself from the numbers because you can really nauseate yourself with the numbers, and numbers are really like a long. You need to step back and look at a long-term kind of view. Like you have to look at like either 3 or 6 or even 12 months to be like, what was our percentage growth over this period?
Well, in the reality, it's not like the old form of publication where if they read the newspaper, they only read it that day.
Yeah.
The reality with your type of publication is that it can grow as it goes on. It's like you're going to go back and read something you've already posted.
Yeah. But numbers is a really good point. And like what Matt's been talking about is good because like that can like eat you up if you focus on that too much. And it's ridiculous if you think about it because it's like, oh, only 30,000 people. But I'm like, I don't think I've met that many people in my life.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
the fact that they're like reading the stuff we're writing is really awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's...
Yeah, YouTube has kind of tweaked that for us now because you hear millions of views and stuff, and that's like that's really impressive, right?
The like all of that stuff, like how many likes did you get, how many shares did you get, retweets, all that stuff. But
it's like built in now,
it's really hard because those metrics are what people, they want those numbers to then figure out the advertising dollars and all this other stuff. But at the same time too, it's like you can't focus on just likes all the time because there's not there's a detachment from reality with those likes and those shares.
Yes.
There's a lot of times too that people might enjoy your content, but they don't click like or they don't click recommend it, but they just really enjoyed it or it had an impact like on their on their their own
their soul
or their spirit or whatever it is. They had an impact on their daily life.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what we want to achieve with what we're doing is to have an impact positively on people's lives. Yeah. So it's hard to measure that. But I think you measure that, at least we do, by looking at the morale that we're like the community we're creating and the vibe we get and the one-on-one contact we get that say like, this story really changed my life or this one really helped me through a hard spot.
Yeah. I completely understand that.
I
think you kind of understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those types of things are really hard to quantify, but those types of things are really, I think, what make what we're doing really interesting, and why we keep probably doing it, I think. Yeah.
And then I think too, like the other thing, I won't go on about this too much more, but that's really interesting is like we've watched a lot of talks and read a lot of stuff about this, and other people who have really great opinions on this is how do you put one person that maybe goes to a site once a month, or like, there's 100,000 people that go to a site and they stay there for like 3 seconds or a minute or whatever, versus like 30,000 people that maybe stay on that site for 3 minutes or, visit multiple pages or read multiple interviews and stuff like that. Like, how do you put those on the same value? Like, so. Yeah,
that's fair. So
let's,
do you think it's time?
Let's take 1 more minute just to do, give me sort of the, so 2 years ago you started, it's just the two of you. Do you guys have an office? And then how, maybe just a little bit about sort of that progress of starting
it started with just you first.
Yes, yeah.
And then you brought Matt in?
Yeah, so...
I brought myself in.
Matt brought himself in.
We'll tell the story.
So I guess, how it started basically was I am fairly young. I was in my first job out of university, and I was just feeling kind of overwhelmed with, like, how do you structure your day and your week to be the most productive? Like, what tools should I be using to do this or that? And it's like, the internet is great, but it's very overwhelming and you're trying to find out stuff like that. And I was like, I should just talk to people, I should just talk to someone who's done this or is in a similar role and figure it out. And then the idea started to percolate a little bit, and I was like, all right, let's make a list of questions that I would ask someone if I had the chance, anyone I wanted to talk to. Started sending them over email to local people and then posting their answers on a WordPress blog. So that was kind of how it started, and it evolved from there. And then about a year into it, Matt, I can't even remember, I think we met at like an event or something.
Yeah.
Seems likely.
And then
probably.
I've seen both of you at events.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went out for a beer. Just to kind of bat ideas around on the project.
Yeah.
And I've been following the project for maybe a month or two, and I actually was going through quite a transition in my own career. I've been a web developer for 15 years-ish, and I had my own design company in Toronto, and it was about 10 years deep into that business, and I decided to kind of move away from that business and just be a bit of a nomad in the digital space and go freelance. So in that time, I was kind of like, trying to figure out what's next and what do I want to do, and just kind of like play around with different pursuits. Like, do I want to like take photography seriously and do it professionally, or do I just want to really dig deep into design and do that? So it was kind of like a period of like reinvention or self-discovery with myself about what I wanted to do. And so I was talking to Amanda about her project, and we kind of just started talking about that whole process of like what Amanda mentioned about, you know, looking for mentorship and what to do next, or how do I be a certain way or whatever. And I was more about like, well, how do I transition? How do I go from something that I've done to do something different, or something that I'm doing next? And that's kind of where I think the two worlds kind of came together. And I think what's maybe ways we work really interesting now is that there's these two perspectives. There's the younger perspective, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but there's the younger perspective around like, you know, I'm at a school, what do I do? How do I start? And then there's like more you know, if you're a bit older and you've done some things with moderate success.
You're trying to be really
Carry
cautious
on.
about that.
Go on.
You've done some things.
Tell
some
us more about
skeletons
those
there.
things.
Yeah, long dramatic pause. No, you know, you've just kind of like you've done some things and you want to do something different, or you want to try something different. So there's this process of reinvention that goes on, and what does that look like? So there's these two different worlds coming together. So that's where again kind of like separates this. It gives us really unique perspective. That's where the cross section of people are really different on the site too. So I
you're both
pitched.
asking the questions? Is that, I thought you were just doing photos, but clearly not.
Well,
No.
when we originally, like when we started coming together, we shared a lot of different ideas. Okay. Amanda does most of the interviews.
Okay.
Originally, I pitched the idea to do team features, which is like this idea around, you know, going in and profiling how teams work together and basically just having a little peek behind the curtain at these companies and give a little like documentary, honest approach or view into what it's like to work at Facebook or Igloo or whatever. So that was the kind of idea, and then we just naturally had these kind of like similar values around sharing these stories about people who are, you know, doing the work they love and navigating the challenges around that. So while Amanda works at it full time, I work at it part time. So there's that balance, but you know, we're very much involved in all those day-to-day kind of activities.
We're going to talk about 3 wins now. We're getting into our wins, losses, and future section. So give us 3 wins you guys have experienced.
The big successes that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first big win definitely was getting to go to Facebook. So when Matt first came on and we were talking about the team feature stuff, he connected with an old friend from Toronto who connected us to John Lax from TN and Lax, who is now at Facebook. And so we flew out to San Francisco and we got to spend a day with the design team at Facebook, interviewed a bunch of them.
Surreal.
Sat in a design crit. Like, it was... That was a huge win,
Yeah, that's
it was just like it's just the way it kind of happened too. Like, I talked to my friend Peter, and he was just like, he used to work at TN Lax, and I was like, hey, do you mind introducing me to John? And maybe you can just throw this idea past him, this crazy idea. And it's like,
still not gonna work.
Expecting like, who are you? Like, what? No, I'm not doing that. So I emailed him. He's like, yeah, sounds cool. Let me pass it through PR and comms. And I was like, okay. So, but then we didn't hear from him for like. So I was like, well, it was like 2 weeks before California, and we're like, well, we're probably not going to go to Facebook. But it was, you know, we were this close.
Yeah.
But, and then like a couple days before we went, he's like, yep, so we're good. You guys can come. So I emailed them, and I was like, so guess what we're doing? We're going to go to Facebook. This is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And we went down there, and it's just like, you know, just the scale of it all. It was just like, and that's where the story really came from. It's just this kind of like, just small town Canadian kids, you know, you go to Facebook and it's like, you know, like this shock and awe around just the magnitude of what tech has become in the past, you know, 20 years to like this massive building with this
champagne
huge
fountains and caviar.
Well, they had soft serve ice cream.
Yeah.
I mean,
There you go. It wasn't made of gold. It was milk.
It's not Trump Tower.
Maybe it was organic.
Good.
Yeah.
But you know, so it's a really interesting experience, just you know, having that, and I think that came through in the story. Is just like this, and then that just kind of set the table for this level of authenticity we wanted to have.
So what are some other wins that you've maybe got from that, or?
I don't know. I mean, I think being able to do it a second time then, like we went back to San Francisco a second time and we talked to Medium and a bunch, like just I think that really is definitely the biggest win, is being able to go into all these
having
companies.
that reputation.
Yeah, and I think like realizing that like they're just people, and they're like, yeah, come in, hang out. Like they're super excited about it, you know. Like there's not we haven't experienced a lot of ego, which is really refreshing, you know. Like you get to go in and just hang out and chat, and that's really awesome.
Yeah,
so.
and we want to bring that perspective, like. So a lot of times you have like, you may look at so-and-so on Twitter and be like, oh my God, like they're so untouchable and like their career is so amazing or whatever it is. But when you kind of like, they let us in and maybe interview them or have a look at how they work, and we put this kind of like real lens on them, it's like they're just normal people doing their work. They have challenges. Sometimes they don't like what they do, even though they're apparently crushing it.
I'm going to give you, I'm not going to do a metaphor. I have so many metaphors right now.
But
I'm not going to do it.
Drop one. No.
No. We're working on it.
Okay.
We're trying to,
because I make fun of them
metaphors.
every single time.
That's the way my mind works in metaphors.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
It's dad jokes. It's like dad jokes and metaphors. Yep.
Yeah.
But that could be like the gimmick, right? Like I can't go on TSP and not get a
good
metaphor. I was hoping I would.
I'll work on it.
All right.
I'll get you one. Every man puts his pants on one leg at a time. Is too easy.
Oh my God! Wow.
We got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
But there'll be more. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So we got a Facebook win.
Yeah.
We got a Silicon Valley win.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, and then what's the third?
Well, I think just to add to what Amanda was saying is just like there's been this kind of like snowball effect in a way that, like, you know, as soon as you have that first victory, the second one gets a little bit easier, and the third one becomes a little bit easier. So that's been that trip the first trip to California was really like night and day. It was like the project before, the project after.
What was the third win? You pick a third win.
Third win. I don't know.
Your
Just
favorite interview so far.
You know what? I think no. Actually, this is my third win. I think when Amanda decided to, go full time with Ways We Work, that was a huge victory for me because I think that was really saying how committed she was to it and how it just enabled so much more. So I think when that happened, I know it's really hard, and there's
you like ramen noodles, right?
It's a tricky balance, but that was a huge win because that means that she had the freedom to travel when the people we were featuring let us come and see them. It wasn't like, okay, we'll have to coordinate vacation time, and so that was a really big victory for the project for sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah. All right, on the flip side of that, what are some failures, some losses?
What's hard?
Because they happen.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
And you learn from them and you get better and happy something or other. Got a metaphor for that?
No. Dare not. Did you ever ask somebody a question 3 or 4 times before you got the answer you're looking for?
Or someone
For
never.
sure.
I think there are interviews that go better than others in general. And then there's I definitely have had a couple where it's just, you don't connect, right? And it's not necessarily a negative thing, and you walk away from it and the interview ends up being great anyway and people take something from it, but you don't get that like feeling of like, I really made a connection with them. I really like felt like I was engaged, things like then that happens. So I don't know, there's not a specific example of that, but what was it?
Have you done any pivots?
I've blacked them out.
There's a lot of pivoting we've done.
I know you
for
have,
sure.
so.
Yeah. Trying different techniques of trying to turn like revenue from the project into something that we can sustain ourselves with. There's lots of trial and error there.
So what are some that would be helpful?
There's a lot of rejection.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's not new though. Everyone goes through that.
I won't say the name of the company, but we had someone pitch to do like a video series, and they were
these guys?
No.
Oak and Rumble.
It was actually a company in Seattle, and
these guys are good. Yeah.
We went through the whole like process and like tried to set a number and figure it out, and we spent a few months on that, going back and forth trying to find out, and we just didn't want it to be. We didn't want it to be just their customers. We were like, we want you to just sponsor the video series, Of course, that's like the dream. But so it didn't end up working out in the end, and that was a lot of time and effort spent on that and talking about that. And
we're very careful with the content. We don't. I mean, when we introduce sponsorship or advertising or whatever it is that we're going to do, we want it to really fit with the model that we're doing. So there really has to be this level of like authenticity around. Right. So if we're going to do advertorials and have everyone just pay us money to do these things, I think it'll come across in the content, and it just won't be as engaging, and people will just see through it, and we might make a few bucks doing it, but I think it'll lose a bit of its soul.
Yep.
So we're trying to figure out a way, if it's possible, to to have people believe in what we believe in a way, and try to buy into what we're doing to allow us to just keep doing it in the similar approach that we're doing it now, but maybe with just a logo on the page, or something that, or some sort of arrangement. We're still we're trying different things every month, so it's
Well, when you figure it out.
For sure. For sure. And if you're out there and you like it, give us a call. That sounds good.
And then if you want to talk about the.
Oh yeah. So so.
The challenge, you have.
No, this is a loss. It's a full loss.
I love these stories.
Yeah. So we, the second time we went to California, there was this impetus to go because we got an email from somebody, and they're like, "Hey, we saw your Facebook piece. It was really cool. I think you should come to my company and check us out."
Not to be named, yes.
No, we'll name them.
Oh.
It's okay.
Awesome.
So and then Amanda forwards this to me, and she says, "Hey, is this? Do you think this is real?"
I totally thought it was fake.
It's totally fake. Because, so then I respond to him, and he sends me an email back, and I was like, "This is real." And it turns. So anyway, so the company was NASA.
I've heard of that.
This little thing called NASA.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Very
like,
startup.
and I'm like, is this NASA?
You're being
NASA
pranked.
wants us to come, and
This is an administration.
and
This isn't a startup.
this is a government organization. This is serious stuff. They make rockets and spaceships and stuff. And I happen to be a huge space nerd. If you look at the photos I take, so that was crazy. So we're like, holy
Say it.
shit, we got to go down to NASA. I wasn't sure if
It's a
show
podcast.
for kids. I don't know. It's
No.
family friendly.
No.
A
So
lot of 14-year-olds listening.
we have to do this. This is insane. So let's line up some more. And
got sponsored
We
for
got
the trip.
sponsored for the
Yeah.
trip, and so we went down there and we did Medium. We did a company called Cooper. We went back to Facebook to visit a guy we interviewed at Instagram, and it was a really awesome trip. So then we went to NASA, and it turns out, so we show up and we do all the security, which was insane, right? So we're like, this is for real. But we go in there, and the guy who we were communicating with, just as we were about to go into some of the buildings, he's like, "Oh, and by the way, to kind of make this make this happen, we had to kind of I just had to tell them that you were going to focus on me and my company, and so NASA just doesn't really know you're here."
What?
I was like, "Whoa,
Who are you
whoa, your company?"
Yeah.
I was like,
What's your company?
Yeah, I thought you were NASA. So, but anyway, there's a long string of emails that happened before this that kind of made me start to scratch my head. I think this might be a bit strange. So it turns out NASA PR and NASA people had no idea that Ways We Work was there to write a story about them, but we were there to write a story about this guy who happens to be a contractor for
An alien
who is
snuggled
hired
them
by
into
NASA, who is hired by NASA, who works on the NASA base there in California, and but doesn't really, doesn't do the NASA website or doesn't have he's the team, and he's just one guy. He was a really interesting guy. He had some pretty interesting stories, and he's a musician and all this other stuff, but. We were just kind of like that record scratch,
Yeah,
like whoa, cause I'm I got my NASA suit on. I'm this is we're gonna see spaceships. This is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
Not
Now you're
And
Felix
then we're
Baumgartner just plummeting.
it's just
Just
the
thinking,
reality
oh, no.
set in, and we're we're not interviewing NASA. We're interviewing a guy who contracts for NASA, and
But you're doing it at NASA.
But we're doing it at NASA,
We
but
were
can't
there.
we can't go in any of the buildings.
Yeah, NASA doesn't know you're
And
there.
NASA doesn't know it. So NASA doesn't know we're there.
Well, I'm sure they knew.
So
NASA knows.
So that was
Yeah, we put our game faces on.
we put our game
did
faces.
the
We
thing.
tried our best.
Yeah.
We sat down with them. We took pictures. We
Yeah.
haven't. There's no interview, but
No, we didn't release anything from that. We have about a half an hour afterwards of us in the car, just getting it out.
Just getting it
Just
out of our system, because just
yeah.
the disappointment level was
Yeah.
at maximum.
Yeah.
It was at 11.
Yeah.
Because you go in there with reasonable expectations of seeing something cool. And we have an interesting little badge or, NASA badge.
Yeah. We got a cool photo. We got some cool photos.
We got a grab bag with
we got
some
swag.
pictures in it.
That's good.
And that's hard. Like as you go from Facebook, then you're going back. How do you top Facebook? NASA's doing it.
Yeah.
Like that's up there, right?
Well,
Yeah. You get that pulled out.
Nope.
Yeah, and it's funny because that morning before we went to NASA, we were actually at the Facebook headquarters having lunch.
You're like,
we're just
fancy.
like,
you're
like, everyone at NASA next.
Sorry, I can't have dessert.
See chumps,
We're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what's the future
we
look
got
like
brought
for you
back
guys?
to reality.
Yeah.
What's the future look like for you guys then? What
You
are
know,
three future things?
Yeah, I think we tried a lot of stuff over the last year in particular, and we're experimenting with a lot of things. And I think what we're really going to focus on is just like, how do we continue doing content and how do we continue doing it better? And then also look at just how can I continue doing this full time, and how can we maybe even eventually get Matt on in more of a full time capacity, and looking at that sort of how can we do more trips? How can we have like budget and things like that? So we are in terms of solid things, we're trying to launch a job board in the next couple weeks, I think. So we're going to give a little bit of a ways we work spin on that, hopefully, in terms of what the posts look like and the style. So we're launching that in a couple weeks. And then I think just sort of revisiting sponsorship and how we can do that in a creative way, and how we can, go from there.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like doubling down on how we create content and the content we're creating, because I feel like a lot of the other stuff will start to happen in a faster and quicker and more exciting way once we really start carving out this really unique spot with our content. I think we're getting close to this, to that spot, but I think there's still some work to go in that area. But I feel like that the content is really what's going to drive the success of this project for sure.
Do you hope at all to grow your team? Do you wish you had more?
I don't know. Like right now, I think we're okay. I mean, it's some of the administrative stuff, but at the same time too, like we want to just be able to get to a point where we can support ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then, it'd be great to have like a awesome office space, like downtown Waterloo or something.
Yeah.
That we can kind of like have
believe
has
it's
a headquarters. I'm not from around here.
From around these parts.
It's one of the first lessons I learned.
Yeah, so we're uptown.
Uptown.
Uptown Waterloo is beautiful.
Yeah.
Maybe a co-op student to join.
Yeah,
you or something
co-op
like
or someone just to help out with some of the the day-to-day would be great. But for the most part, it's the goal is just to kind of like focus, grow smartly. If we're going to grow smartly, and that's around, hiring someone to help us, you know, push the content in a different direction, or help
writers, like,
or like someone that can help us, you know, make great relationships with people that, you know, that we can't make on our own. Because that's one of the challenges for sure, is that like, who is this guy like calling me, and like I'm not gonna
don't worry.
Yeah, it's like
everything's fine.
He's from NASA. Yeah, exactly. I interview guys from NASA. Okay, like just call me.
Yeah.
I didn't though, but anyway, so that's kind of like that's kind of the future goal. Yeah, it's just to kind of keep going.
You ready? Are you gonna do it?
No, I'm not doing it.
Who's your hashtag startup crush here locally?
I got an obvious one.
Who's killing it?
I think Boltmade's killing it.
They are.
I think I mean I come from a space. I had my own design company for a long time, and that service space, especially in tech, is really challenging. Like trying to find a business model you can scale on, and as a design company, as a company that's delivering those types of services, is really hard. It's really, really hard. And there's times where you're like, you know, you wonder if you're even going to be relevant in 10 years, because all these things are being pulled internally within companies. But Boltmade has a really interesting business model, and they're doing it really differently. And I think it's refreshing. And I think, you know, if I were to do it all over again, I think that would be the model to do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm really impressed with what they've done, for sure.
And mine is Bridget, for sure. Just for, you know, such obvious reasons. Like, they're two amazing.
Just went behind a
Oh,
crowd.
there we go.
And we're back.
Yeah, so I'm so impressed with what they've done. Just like watching them, like when they first started, and then they've raised all this money, and they're in such a male-dominated industry,
and
like,
that for sure.
yeah, they're amazing, and they're just so professional. Like any of the interviews I've read with them, like they're amazing. So they're definitely mine for sure.
What about you, Amaris? Any startup crushes?
I was thinking about it last time. Like, he's gonna ask me, and I'd think of somebody.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it went really well. Oh, I'm going to go with, I have no idea who they are, but I saw it on Twitter.
Yep.
That Control VR place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, it's VR arcade. That is cool. That's an interesting model.
Yeah, cool.
I want to see what they're doing. They're apparently my neighbor.
Virtual reality arcade.
Yeah.
Like locally.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to go there.
Yeah, it's on Columbia Street. I think it's 170 Columbia Street. So in one of the
cool.
Wynn buildings. Yeah.
Oh,
That's awesome.
like an actual arcade.
Soon they'll have to start charging rent there probably. They'll have like you just buy a bunk. People just
Yeah,
go there,
you just
plug
live
in,
there.
and just be like,
I like it.
I'm in the VR space.
I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting model.
That's really cool.
I think they're at the open houses this weekend, so
Cool. Yeah.
go play for free.
Yeah.
But I want to see what they do, so I'm gonna go with them.
I like that.
I think they're on Twitter. You can tweet that.
Let's do it.
Who's your hashtag startup?
I don't have
crush?
one. I was asking the question this week. Yeah.
I remember who I was gonna say. I was gonna say Grobo.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
looked at your face and I remembered Grobo.
Thank you. 'Cause I've got some growth happening.
Oh no.
No, because you work at Grobo.
Yep. So Grobo has just come back and is pivoting. So good stuff happening.
And now they have like pictures of what they're working on.
Yep.
And I want one.
Absolutely.
As I was watering my 100 plants yesterday, I was like,
I could do this with my cell phone. That would be awesome.
for one plant. But like,
Yep.
yeah, so I was excited to see that.
Good. Well, thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Grobo. Well, guys, that's about it. Who we have
Cool.
coming on next week?
I can't remember the page.
It's Mark
Page is way too far for me.
with Evergreen Digital Marketing.
Oh yeah, that'll be interesting. And we're
Yep.
going to an office we've never heard of, and we don't know where it is.
Yeah, Pundit. Pundit?
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 Honda IT.
Pund IT?
No.
Yeah, but we're going to be there.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Apparently,
great.
we're gonna be lost.
I'm gonna go with Pund IT. I think that's pretty good. It's
Yeah.
an IT company.
It's very pundy.
Okay.
Yeah, Pund.
Well, guys, that's it for this episode of TSP Weekly. For myself, Stephen Campbell, my co-host, Amaris Gerson, and Amanda Wood and Matt Quinn with Ways We Work. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next week.